All right, the 3 pages in this packet, once again, are grammar focused, but we're not talking about adjectives this time. This says adverbs that tell how. If we're going to talk about adverbs, we should probably do the first thing first. And the first thing I do is always the same. I pick up my pencil and I write my name. So make sure that you have a pencil and that you write your name, not mine, at the top of your paper. Now, if we're going to talk about adverbs, we should probably know how they're different from adjectives. If you remember, adjectives describe nouns. Nouns are people, places, things, ideas, right? So we know that a dog is a noun, and we could describe a dog. We could say the dog is black, it's a big dog, it's fast, it's gentle. These are adjectives because they describe a noun. Now, if we're talking about adverbs, we're also describing, but we're not describing nouns. Well, we know that fell is a verb. It's an action. And if we're going to do adverbs, adverbs describe actions, which are known as verbs. Adjectives describe nouns. Adverbs describe verbs. So if you fall down, fell is a verb. I can describe how somebody fell. I could say they sadly fell, they quickly fell, they clumsily fell, they slowly fell. If I'm describing an action, that's an adverb. If I'm describing a noun, that's an adjective. That's the difference. Describing action versus describing nouns. You'll notice that in a majority of adverbs, there's an ly ending, which is really handy. So if you're looking for an adverb, that's one of the quickest ways to do it. And there are adverbs that don't end in ly, but many, 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 many do. So keep that in mind, okay? Let's move on. And what do you know? It says right here that adverbs describe an action verb. It modifies or limits or adds to the description of the verb. So it helps you kind of see how the action happens. Just like if I slowly fall, I'm going to picture something that's different, right? I'm changing it. Adverbs can tell place, time, or manner in which an action takes place. They answer the questions where, when, and how. So this would be where somebody fell, when they fell, how they fell. But it has to do with action. Most adverbs that tell how an action takes place end in ly. He walked slowly. The dog barked loudly. Once again, those are those ly endings. Not always, but many, many times. Here it says to draw one line under each adverb that tells how an action takes place. And then you're going to circle the verb that goes with that adverb. So in other words, if I was up at my first example here, sorry that my screen's getting weird. I would have underlined the adverb and then circled the verb. So this is what's describing this word. So you underline the adverb that is describing the verb. That is what we're doing in this activity, okay? So, Mom and I walked carefully down to the edge of the pond. And hopefully your spidey sense tingled and you said, "Ooh, I see an ly, carefully." Can you carefully do something? Yes, you can. So carefully is going to be our adverb. Carefully what? Carefully walked. That's our action, okay? Number 2, we eagerly ate our picnic lunch. Once again, I'm seeing that ly, eagerly. Eagerly what? What's the action in that sentence? Ate, that's our verb. 3, Mom pointed silently to a turtle sunning itself on a rock. Now, there's more than one verb in this sentence because I see 2 actions. I see pointed and I see sunning. The only problem is silently what? Did Mom silently point or did Mom silently sun? Well, Mom pointed silently. So this verb has nothing to do with this adverb. Okay, so that can be tricky in a sentence, just so that you're aware. I wanted to point that out. You can have more than one action in a sentence, but not every adverb refers to every verb, okay? I'm going to let you do these next 4 on your own, but let me read them to you. The turtle woke up quickly. ly is going to be your adverb, but what is quickly happening? Quickly what? Answer that and move on to number 5. Pause this video if you need to. It looked around worriedly. There's your ly, worriedly. There's your adverb. Worriedly what? There's only one word. That's going to be your action. Worriedly what? Okay, circle that verb. Number 6, a frog jumped noisily in the water. There's your ly again, underline that noisily, but then circle the action. What is the action word? Noisily what? Number 7, it swam briskly across the pond. I see ly again, briskly. You're going to want to underline your adverb and then circle your action. What is the verb? Briskly what? Okay, once you've answered those, you can move on to B. Remember to pause anytime you need to. Read this paragraph from Carlos's gift, underline the adverb, and circle the verb in the underlined sentence. There's our underlined sentence right there. Let's read. Carlos read the book that night. He found a photograph of the exact kind of bulldog puppy that he craved. Here's the sentence. He eagerly showed Mama the next morning. Now, can we find any adverbs, maybe that end in ly in this sentence? Absolutely we can. Eagerly is going to be our adverb. Eagerly what? What is the action? If I were to look at the words, I have he showed Mama the next morning. Only one of those words is an action word, a verb. What is it? Eagerly what? Hopefully you're circling the word showed right now, because here is our adverb and there's our verb. So eagerly is describing how he showed Mama the next morning. When you're ready, let's move on. Here are some things to remember that we talked about on the previous page, but that's okay. An adjective describes a noun, right? Brown dog. An adverb, use an adverb to describe a verb. Quickly run, okay? Action, nouns, okay? We're going to want to make sure we don't mix up adjectives with adverbs that tell how, okay? Circle the word that correctly completes each sentence. You'll notice that we have things like important, importantly. So that's an adjective, that's an adverb. Uh-oh, you have to know the difference. Bold, boldly. Colorful, colorfully. Quick, quickly. Loud, loudly. Happy, happily. So let's see what's going on. The dragon is an blank part of Chinese New Year. Important or importantly is describing what word? Well, it's describing part. Part of Chinese New Year. So is it an important part or an importantly part? Well, part is a noun, has to be an adjective that describes the noun. The dragon is an important part of Chinese New Year. Okay, next one. People dressed as a dragon dance down the street. So we have to figure out if we're going to use bold or boldly. But what are we talking about? People dressed as a dragon dance blank down the street. We're describing this word right here, dance. Is dance a noun or a verb? People dressed as a dragon dance down the street. That's an action. If I'm describing how they dance, I need an adverb. Most adverbs end in ly. They're going to boldly dance down the street. Okay, one more, and then the rest are yours. The costume is made of blank silk. Colorful or colorfully what? What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about silk. That's that very soft fabric. So that's something you can touch. So that's a noun. Which one of these words is going to describe a noun? Well, it can't be the adjective, so it has to be the adjective. Only adjectives describe nouns. Colorful silk. The costume is made of colorful silk. Okay, these next ones are going to be on your own, but I'm going to read them with you. The dragon weaves blank in and out of the crowd. And weaving would be kind of a type of dance. So we're going to say weaves is a verb, it's an action, and then you're going to have to figure out which word goes with it. On number 5, the people shout blank to get the dragon's attention. Once again, shout is an action, so you're going to have to figure out which word goes with the verb. Blank children wave to the dragon. What are children? Children are people, so those are nouns. You're going to have to figure out which one of these two words goes with nouns. We are not going to do the connect to community. So we can move on to the next page. Just like we did with adjectives, we're going to talk about adverbs that compare. Okay, and we can compare two or more. That's what this says in here. Just like with adjectives. And it says with most one-syllable adverbs, you can just put an ER or an EST on the end. Slow becomes slower or slowest. There's our endings right here. And then hard can become harder or hardest just by putting the ER or EST on the end. You can use more and most with adverbs if you have two or more syllables. Okay, so you can say more carefully or most silently. So you can put a more or a most with them if we're talking about two or more syllables. Okay, slow, one syllable. Hard, one syllable. Carefully, silently, that's more. Okay, more than two even. If I move on to A, you then have to choose which one works correctly. So my brother runs blank than I do. Well, just like before, brother, that's a noun. I am a noun, so that's two. ER is used for only two. EST is used for more than two. Okay, 3 plus, right? Well, if that's only two, I have to say faster. Number 2 says, Jay solved the problem blank quickly than Frank. There's our adverb, by the way. Am I going to say more quickly or most quickly? Well, let's do our numbers again. Jay and Frank. That's who we're talking about. There's 2 of them, right? I'm not talking about more than 2, so I have to use more. I got to find the rest of my screen here. Here we go. Number 3. The first band played the song The Blank of any of the bands. So we're talking about one band over here, the first band. But then it says of any of the bands. So there must have been lots of bands there. Lots of bands would be more than 2. Louder would be for 2. Loudest would be for 3 or more. It has to be loudest. Okay? Let's do numbers. I'm going to have you do 4 through 7, but let me read them to you. Kara finished the test blank than the other students. So yes, we're talking about Kara, but then it says than the other students. So that's more than 2. Okay? 5. Hurricanes are blank common in the fall than they are in the spring. This could be tricky because there are lots of hurricanes. So that's more than 2. But it says hurricanes in the fall and hurricanes in the spring. So we're actually talking about time periods here. So we're talking about in the fall and in the spring. So that is only 2 things. Okay, that's a little bit of a tricky one. Here's another one that's a little bit tricky. Birds, well, there's billions of birds. Birds migrate blank often before winter than after. So this is kind of like the previous question. It's because we're talking about birds migrating, but we're talking about before the winter and then after the winter. So they're time periods. So before winter is one time period. after winter is another. So we're only talking about two things, okay? That piano recital lasted blank than the last one. So if we're talking about numbers, I have one piano recital, and then I have the last piano recital. So that's two things. When you're ready, let's move on to B. So we're going to read lines from Theseus and the Minotaur. So we're going to circle the adverbs in the underlined sentence. So that must mean there's more than one, right? So let's take a look. At last the prince returned, dragging the sword. The Minotaur is destroyed. Let's go quickly and quietly back to the ship. The prince tapped on the door, and the princess opened it. They all ran to their ship together and sailed away. So we're looking at the underlined sentence, trying to figure out which words are adverbs. Well, we said a lot of them end in ly, and I do see two words that end in ly, but let's check to see if that's true. We know that adverbs describe actions. What is the action in this sentence? Let's go quickly and quietly back to the ship. Quickly is not an action. Quietly is not an action. What's the action? I believe the action is go. So, because if you're going somewhere, that's an action. Can quickly and quietly describe the action go? Can you quickly go somewhere? Yes, you can. Can you quietly go somewhere? Yes, you can. So quickly, quietly, those are both the adverbs in the underlined sentence.